Hey, what is up mortals? It is Tsuki here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 1 of What If Villains Had an Academy. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So we begin. All men are not created equal. All for One mutters, lifting up his writhing target by the neck. In a vain attempt to escape, the victim tries to launch a barrage of nearby debris at his attacker. He merely tightened his grip, making the girl's aim veer off course and causing a new stream of tears to stream down her face. Do not worry, I won't kill you. I merely wish to take something that you have, something which I desire. My sinisterest apologies. I am led to believe this part is unpleasant. Without further hesitation, All for One willed the quirk from his victim, imbuing it into himself. After the transfer was complete, the quirk stealer dropped her to the ground. Yes, not all men are created equal. The amalgamation amused. However, I am the one who balances the scales. The collector toyed with his newly acquired ability, reconstructing bits of his surrounding with a wave of his hand. Growing accustomed to his new puzzle piece, kneeled down beside the near unconscious civilian and smiled beneath his mask. I have the nastiest habit of tipping them in my favor. The quirk stealer stood slowly, brushing off his suit, and warped back to the bar he instructed Shigaraki to meet him at. Sure enough, the incorrigible man was waiting patiently at the bar in full costume. He turned to face his superior upon arrival.
It took you longer than I thought it would.
Tomura teased, slowly easing himself out of the stool. Without needing to be told, the young villain placed his hand, minus his pinky, on his savior's shoulder, and the two warped to the abandoned, distant lot a few miles out from Mustafu. A handful of trucks sat in a semicircle around the area, each one packed to capacity with construction materials. All for One motioned for Shigaraki to do his part, prompting the defunct delinquent to gently touch every piece of old debris and patch of overgrowth, which withered and crumbled into minuscule piles of dust. It wasn't long before they were briskly swept away by the wind. Once he was done, Shigaraki stepped to All for One's side, which was the only sign Tomura needed to give his master. Hands raised and gliding around as though directing an orchestra. The conglomeration of quirks began the long process of construction. He had a student hook him up to some supportive medical machinery, then directed his loyal subordinate to walk through the portal and return to the old bar. While doing so, Shigaraki noted the other portals opening, each bringing them one or two bodyguards for his master. The demented disintegrator grinned, noting the reflective dome forming around the lot, rendering the project next to invisible. Crossing through the portal, the degrading miscreant took slight pride in seeing his team stroll through the door on time.
Before you say anything, there's a good reason for you to be here. We've got some things to go over, and until his project is done, the headmaster wants me to teach you all what he's taught me. Be here this time every day, got it? We'll be learning important skills over the next several months. After all, we can't expect to beat the final boss without the tutorial.
Noting the attentiveness of his own subordinates, the young villain's smile grew wider.
Let's begin, shall we?
Izuku Midori ran to see the commotion in the street excitedly, squirming his way to the forefront of the action. Kame Woods, an up-and-coming hero, was duking it out with a seemingly low-ranking villain, and this would be a perfect chance to take notes. As one would expect, the fight was relatively one-sided. The hero was backing the villain into a corner while support arrived to prevent any civilian injuries. However, what seemingly nobody expected was a newcomer to the scene, arriving with a flying kick, a debuting hero and announcing herself as Mount Lady. She barely had time to utter her hero name, as time for everyone present seemed to slow. The villain reflexively caught the young crusader by the leg with a crude smile before whipping the unfortunate giantess right past him, using the gargantuan maiden's momentum against her and forcing her into the mass of civilians just outside of the action. Crowd began to panic. The reality of their dangerous and unfortunate circumstances finally burrowed into the forefront of their minds. The wooden wanderer looking briefly between the outlaw and the possible flood of casualties and chose to aid with the latter, allowing the villain to escape unscathed. Midoriya's jaw dropped as the hulking form of Mount Lady barreled towards him before she was caught in a massive web of tense branches sprouting by the other currently debuting hero. The crowd let out a collective exhale, relieved at the averted crisis, and a couple more mobile heroes gave chase to the villain fleeing from the scene. Kame caught his breath, and the towering blonde was scalded by her recklessness by higher-ranking heroes. Midoriya blinked before snapping back to reality, cursing himself for forgetting to take notes. The quirkless teen shook his head, jotting down a quick note of Mount Lady and her quirk before turning home, disappointed. The crowd was bustling about what had happened and how the situation could have gone even further. Possibly the more disturbing end of the discussion for Midoriya was what he overheard Kamiya say just before he was out of earshot. Villain seems to have gotten extraordinarily competent lately. I just hope I can keep maintaining everyone's safety. As Midoriya began to walk home, he contemplated why the villains could be getting so dangerous.
Maybe they're just getting better.
He pondered.
Then again, a lot of villains have been grouping up lately too. Maybe they're just learning from each other.
The quirkless teen didn't have much time to ponder his question, however. As he passed beneath a bridge, the sewer gate at his feet erupted from his crevice, a villain composed entirely of viscous green sludge slithering from the cesspool below.
Well, if he isn't the future successor, let me make sure this goes the way it's supposed to, kid. This'll only hurt until you go unconscious, and who knows how long that's gonna take.
The sinister sloop laughed loudly, striking fear into Midoriya's heart. He tried to run, but he was no match for the villain. He moved far faster than the nervous boy expected, and to the sheer horror of his hostage, the sludge villain began stuffing himself down the young man's body. The struggling didn't last longer than a few seconds before Midoriya lost consciousness. As he blinked out of the world, he saw a flash of red and blue, and hoped it was something which could save his life.
I've heard here's the
foul foe began before being promptly interrupted and captured by an angrier than usual All Might. The viscous villain was contained within a pair of soda bottles after a couple of short seconds, but All Might was more concerned with the civilian laying on the ground. He tried waking the boy up, but to no avail. Heaving a sigh, All Might picked up the young man and jumped towards the hospital, praying for the lad under his breath and cursing his own weakness. Clutching his wound, he grinded his teeth and kept leaping towards the nearest emergency room.
He should make a full recovery after a week or so. His family was contacted and will make it here as soon as possible. I'm sure it would mean a lot if you could stay here. You did save him after all.
Of course. All Might nodded, waiting for the nurse to leave before rapidly wrapping the privacy curtains around himself and the kid, reverting back to his emaciated small form. Good, I'm sorry, kid. I'll make sure you recover all right. Cursing himself, the number one hero messed up his hair in frustration. Where had he gone wrong? Maybe if he hadn't let that one hardcore fan hold him up. He seemed so hurt and in need of inspiration that the symbol of peace didn't bat an eye at giving him a nice smile and handshake. Those seconds had to count, though. Shaking his head, the wounded hero kneeled by the bed. Either way, this was his fault and he needed to ensure his wrong would be righted. The television in front of the boy's bed was turned to the news, coverage of the Mount Lady and Kamiya Woods incident report wrapping up. Still determining what's causing these villains to be so dangerous. In related news, the pro-heroes known as the Wild Wild Pussycats have recently been put onto the bench. Two of their members are in critical condition, namely Maladay and Ragdoll. The remaining duo claims they have no recollection of what had happened to their comrades, and have deemed it too dangerous for them to take on jobs that have power. They're currently seeing to their partner's injuries alongside hospital staff. All Might's eyes widened as the newscaster continued. That's not all. Sir Night-Eye was also discovered unconscious and in critical condition in their own office earlier today. He's been reported to have faded into and out of consciousness several times, and has yet to be stabilized enough to interview about what happened. The symbol of peace gripped the footboard tightly, flexing his arm slightly and bending the metal bar. He looked down, choking back his tears. He made a note to go see Night-Eye as soon as his current situation was dealt with. It was high time to make amends anyways. He looked up after a while, expression steeled. Still the newscaster continued. Finally, one Katsume Shimona, a 6-year-old boy, was found in critical condition on the outskirts of Mustafu. The young boy originated from Nabu Island, and it is unknown how long he laid outside unconscious, or what he could possibly be off his home island. According to doctors' reports, the boy is currently running a fever of approximately 41 degrees Celsius and has countless injuries on his body. He has not been brought into consciousness since he was found. Authorities have tried contacting his family with no response. Villains are believed to be caught. The television was cut off abruptly with a click of a remote. All Might stood after a little while, rubbing his eyes and taking a few deep breaths to calm himself before swapping out his hero costume for normal clothes and making his way out to the drinking fountain. Little did he realize that he didn't leave Midoriya alone. A sinister figure slinked out of the shadows directly next to Midoriya's bed. Grinning broadly beneath his mask, he laid a single hand on the boy's head. Then the screaming started. The nurses came into the room, sedating the green-haired teen, and All Might came close behind after swapping back into his hero costume and buffing up, only to feel fury build in his chest at seeing the suffering youngster. What did the boy go through? Why did it happen as soon as I left the room? His mind swirling with questions, the symbol of peace inspected the boy. The inspection was to no avail, however, as he found nothing wrong with the boy. The nurses, however, immediately noticed something after reading through Izuku's medical records.
Hey, isn't that a sign of a quirk?
The nurse asked another, who nodded. The questioning aide looked confused as she looked intensely at the green-haired patient's hand, which was very faintly pulsing with a malachite green glow. What's so odd with that? All Might questioned, well and truly confused. The vocal nurse looked up at him, just as confused.
He's registered in our system as quirkless, sir.
The sun seemed to recoil behind the clouds, befitting for the grand opening of perhaps the greatest long-term plan for the Collector had orchestrated. The quirk stealer silently admired the gorgeous construction of his magnum opus. The spiral at the far back of the building was as imposing as the crime lord had hoped, and the brickwork was flawless as its creator. With a final sigh, All for One stood proudly in front of the gorgeous building and turned to face the crowd of hundreds of wannabes and established criminals. Individuals from all walks of life could be seen here. Neglected rich teens, scrappy middle-aged men and women living on the streets, young adults barely scraping by on what little they can earn on small robberies. They all stood in organized lines, ready to learn from the best of the best. Giving the crowd a deep bow, the quirk connoisseur smiled proudly beneath his imposing costume. He took in the sight of all those who had yet to experience his criminal empire, and he was more than happy to rebuild it all at once. To teach a new generation how to perpetrate what he had begun, he gave himself one last thought before ushering in his new students. This is my Villain Academy. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in this story thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We the Celestial Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel already, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being we only accept 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be. Whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits, we're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have a great day.